This is Travel by the Book TV. Call me Rachel.
You almost said Ishmael.
I know.
And I'm Duane. It has been said that Moby Dick is the most epic of all American novels. So we are going to present you with our most epic episode ever as we chase the great white whale from New York City all the way to New Bedford, Massachusetts. In this whale of an episode, we'll take a self-guided walking tour of important Melville-related sites in Manhattan. We'll travel up to Albany to see his teenage home, then go to Arrowhead, his beloved home in the Berkshires.
So we are standing in the actual space where a large portion of Moby Dick was written by Herman Melville.
We'll then travel to New Bedford, where we'll enjoy the New Bedford Whaling Museum, eat delicious seafood, and stay in an 1855 guest house where Melville's sister once lived. Finally, we'll participate in the annual Moby Dick Read-a-Thon at the museum and across the street at the Seamen's Bethel. Herman Melville was born and died in New York City. For the first part of our adventure, we're following an excellent self-guided walking tour created by the Academy for American Poets. Okay, we are at what used to be 6 Pearl Street on Pearl Street, just on the very bottom of Manhattan, outside of this massive building. But this is where Herman Melville was born in 1819, and then of course it was just a regular building. There used to be a plaque here, and if you go to the internet, they will say, yeah, there's a plaque there, there'll be pictures of it. But it looks like there was a major renovation, and when they did the renovation, they never put the plaque back up, and apparently it's gone. So
it's in somebody's house.
Somebody took it home. So if you have the plaque, please return it. People should make a big deal. There should be a plaque. There should be a statue here of Herman Melville, or of a whale, perhaps. That'd be nice. We're gonna look. Maybe the plaque's here. Let's go find it. So far, there's nothing here. There's a Keith Haring statue right here, which is always cool, always appropriate. But in this lovely building, not to mention that this was once where, see, they've got a big gold globe thing up there. What if there was a whale there floating on the inside? Some sort of thing.
Okay, so the reason that we know that Herman Melville was born here, and maybe the reason that they don't feel that they need a plaque or a bust anymore, is because it has a other landmark that is indicative of the epic tale of Moby Dick. Yes, there actually is a Starbucks coffee right where Herman Melville was born, or across the street from where Herman Melville was born. So I don't know if Starbucks knows the significance of their location, but either way, it's pretty amazing that there's a Starbucks here.
It's fun. The list of sites on this walking tour associated with both Melville's life and characters from his books is long and fascinating. Though most of the actual buildings are gone now, the history explained in this walking tour is extensive and should be read. The Academy has posted other walking tours as well, including ones for Edgar Allan Poe, Langston Hughes, Walt Whitman, and Wallace Stevens. So this is where George Washington was inaugurated President of the United States. In 1863, Herman Melville moved back to New York after living away for over 30 years. The street he lived on is now named in his honor.
So I'm standing just off the corner of East 26th and Park Avenue, and we come to a Herman Melville plaque that's actually here and still here. This is where he spent his last roughly 30 years of his life. He lived here, he wrote poetry, he almost finished Billy Budd, which, by the way, is a book that I had to read in high school, and I hated it. So I'm going to have to revisit it and see if I like it. And this I don't even remember, but it's unfinished, and maybe that's why it bothered me. I don't know, but it was published anyway and thrust upon a bunch of high schoolers back in the 80s. So anyway, he worked as a customs official and suffered some tragedy here. Both his sons died, one taking his own life and the other one from tuberculosis. So, you know, as Rosanna Dana always says, it's always something. Anyway, so this is where he lived. This is where he died. Thank you to Herman Melville for all his wonderful novels, except for Billy Budd. So now we are going to head up to Albany on our way to New Bedford for the Moby Dick Read-a-Thon.
Headed to Albany. Okay, we're in Albany, right downtown, and we're at what's known as Clinton Square. And right here in Clinton Square, we find a lovely Herman Melville plaque.
Herman Melville, author of Moby Dick, studied and worked during formative years in Albany, 1830 to 1838. Family home at 3 Clinton Square, 1834 to 1838.
So Melville's mother's family was from Albany. They moved back up to Albany from New York because his father, who worked in commodities or something like that, right?
Yeah, well, he was doing something that was successful, and then he started into fur trading.
Anyway,
and commodities.
Things went south, and they started to lose their money.
And he lost his mind.
And they moved up. He lost his mind and moved to Albany. Anyway, they moved back up to Albany to be near his Melville's mother's family. And shortly after arriving here, Melville's father died. He was 12 years old when his father died. Anyway, his home that he lived on, this is the first time in our trip here we're going to see an actual home that Melville lived in, and it's just right around the corner from the plaque here.
Yeah, and this is great because so many of the buildings that we want to show you are no longer in existence. All that remains is a plaque. But the house is standing.
If that.
The house is still standing.
The flowers are still standing. All right, this building here with the peach steps and the 3 flights is the Melville home. So the Melville family were in Albany from 1830 to 1838. In this home behind us, they lived from 1834 to 1838. Melville's home is right next to an Irish pub, so you can come and lift a pint to Herman Melville. Melville didn't live in many places for very long. The place we just showed you in Manhattan, where he lived for the last 30 years of his life, was by far the longest he ever lived anywhere. The other place, I think the second longest he ever lived, was his home called Arrowhead in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, which is about an hour from here and which we're going to go to next. So stay with us to see Arrowhead and stay longer to watch us as we go to the New Bedford Whaling Museum and participate in their annual Moby Dick Read-a-Thon.
Who paints their steps peach?
A foggy day in London town.
In a quarter mile, turn right to stay on Tamarick Road. Your destination is on the left.
Thank you. I am in Arrowhead, which is the home of Herman Melville, with the executive director, Leslie Hertzberg. Leslie, tell us a little bit about this home, this historic Melville home.
Sure. Well, thank you for being here. We love welcoming visitors to this home. He was here from 1850 to 1863 with his whole family. There are a lot of circumstances that actually brought him here to the Berkshires. Herman Melville had come to the Berkshires as a child. His uncle owned a farm not too far from here. It actually still stands. It's in a farmhouse. It was a mansion actually built by a Dutch settler to the area called Melville Place at the time. And his uncle had this farm where he raised the first rutabagas in Berkshire County. That's one of his claims to fame. But Herman and his siblings, after his father's death, when they were living in Albany, his mother would bring them up to the Berkshires to kind of escape the hot summers and cholera outbreaks in Albany. So he spent a lot of time here as a child, and he really fell in love with the landscape. And it was said of him that later in life, he knew every rock and tree in the county. So yeah, he was quite enamored of the landscape, and I think it really inspired him while he was here. He actually tried to buy his uncle's farm when they got here. That wasn't to be. Another woman and her husband actually bought it, who come to be good friends of the Melvilles while they live here.
Okay.
So he kind of buys the next best thing, and that happens to be this house. And this house has a lot going for it at the time. He had a big family to take care of. His older brother, Gansevoort, had passed away, leaving Herman the next in line to take care of his mother and his unmarried sisters. This is one of his unmarried sisters. This is Augusta, who does come to live here at Arrowhead. His other sisters that come are Kate and Helen as well, although we don't have images of them. So he needs a lot of rooms. This house was originally built as an inn or a tavern, so it actually has a lot of extra rooms. And a couple other reasons that this house is appealing. He falls in love with the view of Mount Greylock that is just to the north of us. The back and what you see of the two mountains together really could, in the wintertime, look like the back of a whale kind of breaching out of the waters. And so that's part of what inspired, of course, Moby Dick.
Okay.
As it was written in the winter of 1850 and 1851. The next book he wrote after Moby Dick was actually dedicated to Mount Greylock, to Mount Greylock's most excellent majesty. And then a fortuitous meeting with another author also encouraged him to move to this area. So on yet another hike, on yet another mountain in the Berkshires, Monument Mountain in Great Barrington, south of us, he meets Nathaniel Hawthorne. And Nathaniel Hawthorne is only in the Berkshires for 18 months total, but that meeting made Melville want to move here to be close to Hawthorne.
So they met out here. They didn't meet.
Here.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of people think, oh, Hawthorne's by, they associate Hawthorne with Salem. They associate Hawthorne with the old Manson Concord often. But when he gets here, he's actually running away from Salem. The Scarlet Letter has not been well received. A little bit of controversy there. He's here in Lenox at what's called the Little Red Cottage, which is now on the grounds of Tanglewood, which is the summer home of the Boston Symphony Orchestra.
Okay.
Hawthorne is there. Melville thinks, I need to be here to continue these conversations that I've started with Hawthorne. So that's why this house really appeals to him for those three main reasons. Because at first, Moby Dick wasn't published, was not accepted for publication in the U.S. It was only accepted for publication in England.
Okay, so he wrote Typee first. So the publishing company of Typee didn't want Moby Dick?
It was a very different kind of novel.
Okay, all right.
Yes. And that's why it wasn't well received at the beginning. So his first 5 novels were very popular. Typee, Omoo, Redburn, White Jacket, and Marty. Published in very quick succession and made him very famous at the time. And put a little bit of money in his pocket. And that was really the only fame and fortune that he really ever saw from his writing. Because in terms of popularity, his books go in the order that they are published. So Typee was his most popular book. Moby Dick is only his 6th most in his lifetime, let's just say.
Okay, yeah. Right.
Let's say that.
Right.
So, but that's how it worked. That's why, he had to continually sell this book, because it was not like these other books, which were adventure books, which were romance books. Moby Dick was a total break from all of those.
Okay.
What inspired the break, do you think? Hawthorne?
A little bit of Hawthorne, sure. I mean, that's the story. I can't, people have guessed about this for a long time. But what a lot of people think is that Hawthorne, Moby Dick is dedicated to Hawthorne. So there's a lot of guesswork that goes on about how the draft changed between Hawthorne's reading and his edits, but of course we'll never know what really changed. The story goes that Hawthorne suggested that he take out an initial part about cannibals, which had been so successful for him in Typee, and cut that part out, and that Hawthorne also suggested adding in a narrative. So adding in the parts about Ahab and about Ishmael and adding that narrative string into the book rather than having all of these choppy kind of...
And then this happens, and then this happens, yeah.
Exactly. So I mentioned his eldest brother, Gansevoort. That's that Dutch heritage. His mother is of Dutch descent. And this is his youngest brother. We don't have a lot of pictures of Melville with his family, so this is kind of a rare one. As I mentioned, his youngest brother, Thomas, is a sea captain aboard a ship called the Meteor. And Melville, so here's Melville and here's Thomas. They look very similar.
Yeah, they do.
He goes on at least one journey we know of with Thomas. This is his younger brother, Alan, who he sells Arrowhead to in 1863. So Alan and his family live here from 1863. Alan's daughters actually stay here until 1927. So the house is continuously occupied by Melvilles from 1850 until 1927.
Okay. Wow. I love a big fireplace.
Yeah, this is a great fireplace. But this is also the part that, subsequent owners have changed. And so I always feel bad bringing people in here and thinking, this is certainly not a 19th century interior. But what does last is this fireplace, and which is so wonderful and such a wonderful part of the house. So here's where Alan leaves his mark, right? So here's where Alan decides that he's going to honor his brother as a writer, and he adds the text on the chimney and on the panels above. And it is text from a short story that Herman wrote while he lived here called I and My Chimney. And it was written in 1856. And it is about a man who, and this is, semi-autobiographical, a man who loves his old farmhouse chimney, and his wife doesn't like it and she wants to tear it down so she can have a center hall colonial.
Oh, gosh.
But it starts here, and it's a little hard to see, but it says, I and my chimney are settling together. We are two gray-headed old smokers who reside in the country. So this is the north parlor, or the best parlor. So a lot of what you will see, and a lot of the decor you'll see in these rooms, are period pieces. Some of them were owned by the Melvilles, and I'll point out the ones that were, but otherwise they are period pieces that were used here in Berkshire County. Since we are the Berkshire County Historical Society that own Arrowhead, so we actually encompass a lot more than just Arrowhead. So a lot of our collection is actually reflecting Berkshire County as well.
Oh, okay.
This particular couch was a Melville piece. But if you imagine women of the time and having these giant petticoats and big skirts, really originally probably only two women would have been able to fit on this couch with all of their clothing. This is a view of Mount Greylock, which was taken probably from the piazza here. A local painter was invited here to Arrowhead to capture this particular view. This is an image of Sarah Morwood, who I mentioned. She's the one that she and her husband bought the Melville farm, and she's the one that is supposedly something of a muse to Herman. She was a writer herself. She was quite charismatic. She had these huge parties, and she would invite all of these literary luminaries that were surrounding her at the time. So Melville, Hawthorne, Longfellow, Thoreau, William Cullen Bryant, Oliver Wendell Holmes.
Grief.
Yeah, I mean, this was a very popular retreat for writers in the mid-19th century. So we haven't talked a lot about the rest of the children, but here's one image of his children. So we know Malcolm came here when he was just 1 year old, but the rest of the children were born here at Arrowhead between 1851 and 1855. But the youngest, Frances or Fanny, as the baby, goes on to have a family of her own. And so that's where we get many of the Melville relatives. And Fanny's daughter, whose name is Eleanor, she does have 4 children. But her oldest, Eleanor, and another son were still alive and knew their grandfather. But this was, they played with this. This was a Melville family piece.
Oh my gosh, look at the little kitchen cupboard.
This little cupboard. And Lizzie actually painted this little flower there.
Fun.
This next generation of Melville women, it's significant because Eleanor, as I said, knew her grandfather. And she becomes the keeper of the family archive. So once Lizzie passes away, Lizzie outlives Herman by, I think, 12 or 13 years. And then it passes down to Fanny. And then when Fanny passes away, she passes it to Eleanor. And so Eleanor in the early 20s is approached by a Columbia University professor who wants to know about her grandfather, and so she starts pulling out things to show him from this archive. And one of the things she pulls out is a small tin box, a bread box, with an unfinished manuscript inside. And this is the manuscript for Billy Budd.
Yeah.
Okay, not one of your favorites.
It's one of those books that you're forced to read in high school that you're just like,
Well, just be glad you weren't forced to read Moby Dick. Billy Budd is a lot shorter.
That is true. So, okay, here's my question. When did Moby Dick become popular?
So, once Billy Budd is discovered, Eleanor and this professor work to try to finish it, and they publish it. So it's published in 1924. When people start reading Billy Budd in 1924 and on, they think to themselves, wow, this is great. A lot of people did, apparently, at the time.
Except me. Everybody loves it but me.
It was widely read, and so then people started saying to themselves, what else did he write? And that is when people start to go back and read Moby Dick again. This is Herman's study. And again, really large room, would have been a bedroom in anyone else's house, but Herman takes it over as his own.
So we are standing in the actual space where a large portion of Moby Dick was written by Herman Melville. This is amazing.
He pushes his whole desk, which is a table. This is not the actual desk or chair. This is period, but not his. Pushes it all the way up against the window, and unfortunately today you cannot see that beautiful view of Mount Greylock. I'm sorry to say, but it is there. And Moby Dick, when he completes it here, some people say he started it in New York and then he finished it here. Some people say he scrapped what he had here and started completely over in the winter of 1850 and 1851. But we'll never really know. What we do know is that all of the Berkshire references that he adds into Moby Dick certainly place him very squarely here, as when you know what to look for, you can think, oh, he was definitely, looking at Greylock then, or he was in the center of Pittsfield then, or he was using Lee marble then. So there are wonderful references like that throughout Moby Dick. As I said, he's close with Nathaniel Hawthorne. One of the only people that we think was allowed in this space and had their own separate guest room off the side here is Nathaniel Hawthorne.
Oh.
So this tiny little bedroom, and he describes a bedroom off of his study, was reserved for guests, and usually that would have been Nathaniel Hawthorne. And then these 2 trunks were his. We talked about some about his travels. You can still see H. Melville on this label here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that smell.
The old wood. The old. Oh, wow. Wow. All right, we just finished our tour of Arrowhead. It was a very humbling experience to be in the same space that he was when he wrote Moby Dick, to see the same view that he did as he wrote. It was a great experience to have, and I highly recommend that you come out here and take the tour. We are now headed off to New Bedford for our next segment into Herman Melville.
Okay, we've made it to New Bedford, and we are at the New Bedford Whaling Museum, and we're really excited to look around. Tomorrow, the Read-a-Thon starts. That's 24 hours of Moby Dick from page 1 to page 1,000,006. But today we're just going to enjoy some learning about whaling and checking out this really cool museum.
We're going to take a deep dive into the museum's exhibit.
It's going to be unfathomable.
Oh, gosh. Okay. What is I wonder what the whale heartbeat is. Okay, I am here at the New Bedford Whaling Museum with Bob Rocha. And can you tell us your title? Because it's a mouthful and I don't remember.
Associate Curator of Science and Research, and also filling in as our acting manager of museum learning.
Great. Okay, so tell us a little bit about this museum, which is pretty amazing, as you can see behind us.
Yep. So this is one of the 4 skeletons we have here. Because we began as a historical society in 1903, we actually tell a lot of stories here. So the title New Bedford Whaling Museum only gives you a hint as to what's here. Clearly, whaling is the biggest part of the local regional story. Sperm whales were a big part of that. Hence we have a sperm whale skeleton and a boat behind it, because that whale boat, as it turns out, came off the last ship to bring oil into this harbor in 1925. So when you come in, you do get to learn about whales, but we also tell the industry story. We tell the story of the people that were involved. And also the money of the whaling industry supported a lot of industries in this area. So you learn some of the stories of those businesses, but also the artists that were supported by the whaling industry money.
Oh, these are lampshades constructed from whale bones.
It's a broad range of artifacts, stories that are told. We take up an entire city block, which you can't tell when you walk in the front door.
No.
Because of the angle of the door, and there's a bit of a hill and all of that.
What did you say this was, a third of the size?
Half size.
Half size? What? Half size. I still want him to be bigger. If I were on the ship, I'd want it to be bigger. Because, to quote Roy Scheider, I think we need a bigger boat.
Cut it up into thin strips. It's interesting that whaling can be both abhorrent but also endlessly interesting and fascinating, and this museum really brings that to life. And it also does it in a way that honors this culture, this society, this important industrial moment, but also recognizes the biological importance of conserving and saving whales now. After a full day of chasing Moby Dick, it was time to eat. So we asked a local for some recommendations.
If you're going to eat sea scallops, this is the place to do it, because the boats bring the scallops here. And if a restaurant here can't get scallops right, they don't deserve to be in business.
Looking forward to some food at the Black Whale.
We are at the Black Whale restaurant, and we are going to try some of the scallops that Bob recommended. These are good, but I don't think I pick scallops. It's a texture thing.
She doesn't like the texture of scallops, but apparently has no problem with oysters.
Oh, yeah.
Those are good.
Yeah, he did. And I was.
Good.
As for me and oysters, I pass, thank you.
I'm just eating the condiments. This is like a pickled vegetable kind of relish kind of thing. Goes really well. But those oysters are just so perky there. No, they're just really tender and just, so good.
What do you have?
Swordfish.
And is it amazing?
It's amazing. They said the server said that they have their own boat that they catch tuna in the summer, did she say? And swordfish in the winter.
And I have the fettuccine, lobster fettuccine. And it's like the most delicious thing I've ever had. It's wonderful. We're spending the night at the Whalehouse, a guest house built in 1855 where Melville's sister once lived.
Wow. This is big.
Ahab's Wife is the book.
We are at the Whalehouse in New Bedford. I am with the owners, Laura Parrish and Tom Lavin. Can you tell us about your house?
Sure. This is what we call the guest suite. This was the former servants' quarters of the house. Okay. So you can tell from this side, once you go onto the other side, that this side is quite a bit more humble when it comes to the architecture and the general layout. I'm renting this side out for 4.5 years. We rent the other side out as well. And then people can rent the entire estate. So Catherine Melville Hoadley lived here with her husband from the late 1850s to the early 1860s. She was the sister of Herman Melville. They were very close. Herman Melville was also best friends with John Hoadley, Catherine's husband. There's no documentation that Melville ever stayed here. However, he was very close with his sister, His best friend was his sister's husband. He was in New England at the time. The original family that lived here, Abby Tabor Hunt and her husband, we are connected and friends with the great-great-great-granddaughter, three greats, granddaughter of Abby Tabor Hunt. It's part of their family oral tradition to talk about when the Melvilles stayed here because their family rented to Catherine Melville. And they say that Melville stayed here and he visited his sister. The history police are going to say that because there's no proof, then he never stayed here. But because of his connection and closeness to his family, and because of the oral tradition from the original family that rented to the Melvilles, we feel like he did stay here. I think it's more magical to feel like he did. And it's such a special place. It's so cool here. So I'm happy we're able to share that with people.
Okay, let's go see the house.
All right. Oh, big dog. Hey, dog. My big dog.
Hey, sweetie.
He's Alistair. He's a puppy.
Up, Amy's.
So that's original. All of the fireplaces, they don't work anymore, but they were all coal, and every one is a little bit different. It's all imported Italian marble, and these tiles here are all original. This piece is from the great-great-great-granddaughter of the original owner of the house.
That was just one of her family heirlooms or something, or just something she had?
I think someone gave it to her and then she framed it, and when we saw her the last time in New York, she decided that it was important for us to have it because of the whales, and she just felt like it belonged here. So this solarium, which is now kind of filled with gardening stuff at the moment, but this was the only addition to the house put on in about 1900.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. So out here, that's the mouth of the harbor out here.
Okay. Wow.
So you can see it all the way to Cuttyhunk. Actually, you can see it today.
Yeah, it's
really clear. We have binoculars here if you wanted to look out. So that's facing south. And then this way, you can kind of see it, but not really. These trees weren't there. Mm-hmm. But this, and imagine this house not being here, but you can see down to the port.
You can see the harbor all over here too.
Wow. Yeah. None of this was here when the house was first built. Madison Street or Bush Street wasn't there. That was just land. This house wasn't there. All of these properties weren't there. The only thing that was here was her dad's house across the street. This yellow house. Abby's house. And then their cousin's house, which is one house over, and then it was County Street. So you can just kind of imagine, yeah.
All right. I would like to thank Laura and Tom and Alistair for sharing their lovely home with us. This is a beautiful place. I am amazed at the original detail that's still here, the condition that the trim, the tiles, the fireplaces are in. It's remarkable how well it's withstood so many different owners and so many different uses of this property. Highly recommend you come and stay here. It's a great location, beautiful neighborhood, very convenient to downtown. And we are now going to head over to the Whaling Museum and start our delve into Moby Dick.
The reading itself will start right at noon in the gallery behind us where our half-scale ship model is. Museum President and CEO Amanda McMullen will say some words of welcome, and then at noon she'll say, "Watch officer, give me 8 bells," and then we do the first 6 chapters in that Bourne building at the stern of the ship model. We anticipate, well, right now I think we have 211 readers. So when we open our doors tomorrow morning at 9, we will be free for everybody that comes in through the end of the marathon Sunday afternoon. The readers have certainly signed up ahead of time.
We are 2 of the readers.
That's right. Yeah. First time reading?
Yep.
Yeah, great. You're gonna love it. And then, but if anybody just wants to come in and watch it, they can watch it. If they're not able to get here, it will be live streamed through our website.
Okay.
The first reader, the Call Me Ishmael reader, will be Taylor Schilling, Emmy and Golden Globe nominated actress from shows such as Orange is the New Black.
Chapter 1. Boomings. Call me Ishmael. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse and nothing particular to interest me on shore, I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world.
Yes, these eyes are windows, and this body of mine is the house. What a pity they didn't stop up the chinks and the crannies and thrust in a little lint here and there. But it's too late to make any improvements now. The universe is finished, the copestone is on, and the chips were carted off a million years ago. Then we go over to the Seamen's Bethel across the street, which in the book was the Whaleman's Chapel. And so because that part of the story was written about that building, and in that building, we actually do chapters 7, 8, 9 in the Bethel. And that includes the singing of the hymn, The Ribs and Terrors, in the Whale.
No one having previously heard his history could for the first time behold Father Mapple without the utmost interest, because there were certain engrafted clerical peculiarities about him, imputable to that adventurous maritime life he had led. When he entered, I observed that he carried no umbrella, and certainly had not come in his carriage, for his tarpaulin hat ran down with melting sleet, and his great pilot cloth jacket seemed almost to drag him to the floor with the weight of the water it had absorbed.
Rise and sing.
P. Dyke was a local teacher. He was the music director of several churches in the area. He conducted the Bedford Choral Society for many, many years. And he was a Milton scholar. He loved Milton, and he put a lot of Milton's works to music.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he was a composer.
And so did he write the music for this?
I think it says arranged.
It just arranged, so he did the melody.
Okay.
And did what arrangers do.
Yeah, arrange things.
Yeah, right.
I give the glory to my God. His all the earth sing
Beloved shipmates, quench the last verse of the first chapter of Jonah. And God had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah. Shipmates, this book, containing only 4 chapters, 4 yarns, is one of the smallest strands in mighty cable of the Scriptures. Yet what depths of the soul does Jonah, deep sea line, sound? What a pregnant lesson to us is this prophet. What a noble thing is this canicle in the fish's belly. I actually believe we've been doing this for about 8-10 years. And but with some great partners that come and read here in the Bethel. And it's a great experience. I am a minister in my life. So it's exciting to read this here and try to give it as much gravitas as I'm sure Melville wanted to have. So.
Okay, I have a question. What is the significance of having the Read-a-Thon at this time of year?
Great question. Because people think, God, it's awfully cold. Why are you doing this in January? Because on January 3rd, 1841, Herman Melville got on the ship Acushnet on its first voyage on the other side of New Bedford Harbor in Fairhaven and sailed out with the crew. So because he left on January 3rd, we try to have ours start as close to January 3rd as possible.
Otherwise, inexplicable question. But I beat the thing down, and again, marking the sleeper, jocularly hinted to Queequeg.
And then we come back to the museum for Chapter 10, and the rest of the marathon happens up in our Harbor View Gallery until 1 p.m. on Sunday.
After all this, the 2 captains, Peleg and Bildad, issued from the cabin and turning to their chief mate, Peleg said, "Now, Starbuck, are you sure everything is right?"
Do you have any suggestions for
first-time readers?
Yeah, for first-time readers.
What I would say is, remember that you're reading to a friendly audience.
Okay.
Everybody here, they're fans of the book, they're fans of Melville. There'll be a lot of other first-time readers.
Why are you here? Why are you reading?
Why are we reading? Why did I read? I've been watching for maybe 10, 12 years. And I just turned 50, and so this was my surprise birthday present. We showed up at DCA yesterday afternoon, not knowing where I was headed, and very luckily I brought my book with me. So
Serendipitous.
Very, very serendipitous, but it's just been an outstanding experience and sort of been a constant with always having it in the background. So the chance to sort of see it has just been amazing.
At last, it was our turn to take the helm, face the storm, and do our own reading. Didn't he kick with right good will? It wasn't a common pitch pine leg he kicked with, was it? No, you were kicked by a great man with a beautiful ivory leg, Stubb. It's an honor. I consider it an honor. Listen, wise Stubb, in old England, the greatest lords think it great glory to be slapped by a queen and made garter knights of.
And names in this list of whale authors, only those following Owen ever saw living whales. But one of them was a real professional harpooner and whaleman. What am I that I should essay to hook the nose of this Leviathan? The awful tauntings of Job might well appall me. Will he, the Leviathan, make a covenant with thee? Behold, the hope of him is vain. But I have swam through libraries and sailed through oceans. I have had to do with whales with these visible hands. I am in earnest, and I will try.
We just finished our reading. What did you think?
So we prepared by reading the section that they told us we would probably read, and it wasn't that section. So that was like the first time we viewed it, was reading it.
Yeah, it was like a section, a few chapters right after they said we would be reading. Anyway, it was nerve-wracking, but a lot of fun. And it's certainly something that if you are a Melville fan or just want to participate in some real fun literary travel adventures, then you should definitely come to New Bedford and sign up to be a reader at the Read-a-Thon.
Aye, Starbuck, aye, my hearty's all round. It was Moby Dick that dismasted me. Moby Dick that brought me to this dead stump I stand on now. Aye, he shouted with a terrific loud animal sob. like that of a heart-stricken moose. Aye, aye. It was that accursed white whale that raised me, made a poor pegging lover of me forever and a day. Then tossing both arms with measureless imprecations, he shouted out, aye, aye, and I'll chase him round Good Hope, and round the Horn, and round the Norway Maelstrom, and round Perdition's flames before I give him up.
And for chapter 40, Melville did suddenly for one chapter he wrote it in dialogue like a script. And so there's a local theater company that's been preparing to perform that, chapter 40. So that's kind of the next thing that's coming on.
Here ride the rolling springs from Pirahu's peak of spears, when they leap down the crags and drown the villages.
While neither our schedules nor our constitutions allowed us to stay to the end of the Read-a-Thon, we had an amazing time exploring the words and the work of Herman Melville. The Read-a-Thon is live streamed each year, and after this experience, I intend to spend the first weekend of each January online, book in hand, going a-whaling.
Oh, that big white god aloft there somewhere in yon darkness.
For Travel by the Book TV, this is Duane and Rachel. Keep reading, keep traveling, and keep watching.